Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked about India's concerns regarding this K issue, and he said upfront and bluntly and falsely that India is wrong and that Canada takes these threats seriously. Mr. Trudeau's assertions fly in the face of facts on the ground. Temples were attacked in Ontario and Toronto. Indira Gandhi's assassination was depicted as a float in Brampton, and there are now even targets on the backs of Indian diplomats. How can Mr. Trudeau simply not see the reality that the Khalistan issue is becoming a huge problem in the West, something that is a core issue for India? Dr. S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, has warned repeatedly, including just in the last 24 hours, asking friendly countries like US, Canada and UK to act against these K groups. But the larger question is, if these countries are not going to listen to India, then what other action can she take to enforce strict action against these K groups by these respective foreign governments?
The loss to understand, other than the requirements of vote bank politics, why anybody would do this.
We've always taken serious action against terrorism, and we always will.
It is a matter of concern that freedom of expression and speech is once again being misused by anti-India elements.
All right, so Justin Trudeau says that Canada always takes strict action. What is that action? Because so far we've not seen anything that might deter these Khalistanis, certainly not deter the 8th of July protests that they've called for in Canada and other parts of North America. Let me now open this up to our panelists who are joining us. Terry Milewski is an author of the book, The Blood for Blood, 50 Years of the Global Khalistan Project. He's joining us from Ontario. Ray Locker is an author and journalist from Washington, D.C. Klinsman Murati is a global affairs expert from London. Lieutenant General retired KJ Singh is former GOC&C of the Western Command. Let me, in fact, start with you, Terry Milewski. Mr. Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, says no, India is wrong, and that Canada from time to time takes action against these Khalistani groups. I want you to enumerate for our viewers what you believe are the three things that Mr. Trudeau's government has done which would significantly deter these Khalistani groups.
Well, that's easy. I can't name one. The problem is that the Prime Minister's statement, and it pains me to say it as a Canadian, is hopelessly inadequate. It's not just that it's clueless. He doesn't seem to have a clue what he's talking about. Obviously, he wasn't properly briefed, if he was briefed at all on this. It misses the moment. It fails to recognize what a critical moment this is, that these Khalistanis have really crossed the line this time, and he has to recognize it. But it's not just clueless. It's also false for any prime minister of any party to look at the sad history of Canada's dealings with Khalistani terrorism over the last 40 years. To suggest that Canada has been taking it extremely seriously, really? We were watching and wiretapping the culprits in the Air India bombing, for example, for 3 months before the bombs blew up and didn't figure out what was going on. Didn't take numerous warnings seriously. 3 weeks before the bombing, India warned Canada clearly and in writing. We are facing threats of bombs being smuggled aboard our planes in Canada, in the luggage. You've got to crack down on baggage security. And the RCMP said, oh, those Indians are always complaining. They want free security. And they shelved it.
No, what I do want to know from Ray Locker is, you know, in the United States, for example, the San Francisco consulate just a few days ago was set on fire. I believe it's the second time this has happened in the last 3 months or so. The question that's being asked is, everyone knows that perimeter security, the outside security of embassies, missions, consul general's offices, are all with the local authorities, are with the local police. And whether it's in the US or in Canada, these attacks simply don't seem to be stopping.
Well, it's hard to stop something unless you know who's going to do it beforehand. I mean, it's very difficult. Many of these embassies and consulates also have private security as well as police protection. I think it would behoove the folks in San Francisco to, put people outside of this consulate all the time. I don't know if that's happening or not, and I certainly hope that the people there, the police there, are trying to find out who caused this, who was behind this attack.
Mm-hmm. So, Klinsman Marathi, one of the things that is rather disingenuous in what Mr. Trudeau is saying is, and I think Terry Miliuski is absolutely right, that there is precious little that Mr. Trudeau's government has done. The Indian External Affairs Minister says this is simply vote bank politics. He can't think of another reason as to why any government would, give fodder to these kinds of groups. What do you think is going on here? Why would not a country and a leader who is clearly courting India, everything from FTA to other economic deals, the Canadian government is courting India as a destination for its investments, a big market, so on and so forth. What can India do to drive home this point with Canada that this is a core issue? It's not just any protest. This is not a protest against an incumbent government or against a politician or a political party. This is a protest asking for the secession of one part of India. Surely that's unacceptable.
Are not unique to India. These are global in their scope. There are many different instances throughout history where we've seen secession movements take hold and motivate that specific demographic to use violence in some cases to get their voice heard. So this is something which India is going through, and it's also very historic. This conflict didn't start yesterday, and it's got many different instances of violence for this phenomenon to increase. When we look at what India can do to actually solve this, first of all, we need to define what solve actually means. Mm-hmm. Does it mean to actually destroy this movement and to oppress it and to keep it down? Or is there another solution which they can come up with? These tend to be a zero-sum game. Either the government get their way or the secession groups get their way. So this is a very difficult thing to, first of all, understand what does success actually mean. The second thing, when it comes time to foreign policy, communication is always very key. This is not only in terms of India-Canada relations, but also we saw violence at the at India House in London, which is down the road from our offices in London. And they are due to have a protest on Sunday, in fact, which is going to be in different capitals across the world. So naturally, safety and security comes first. A strong police presence needs to be there. Protesting in the UK isn't illegal, so this is something that they can do, but it needs to be within the borders of the law.
So let me ask Lieutenant General KJ Singh, one of the things that is constantly talked about is this Khalistan issue has very few takers, very little resonance on the ground actually in Punjab. Whatever is being fueled of it is being fueled from abroad through NRIs. And, look at the number of attacks we've had just in the recent past. We've had the San Francisco consulate that was attacked. We've had the attack in Ontario. We've had the attack, the float. I mean, how disgusting is it that a former prime minister assassinated in the most tragic of circumstances, somebody decides to make a float out of it, and no one has been arrested or no action has been taken against any of the organizers of that float. So the question I'm asking is, what can India then do, sir?
Zakaf, Jai Hind. It's good to be on your program, a very topical issue. See, India's options have to be in consonance with the host country. There are certain obligations under Vienna Conference, Vienna Conventions. So firstly, India has taken few steps. It has sent a very strong message to Canada, and today the Canadian Prime Minister responded also. So message is at least received.
Okay.
The response has been a little bit of hypocritical kind of response. The second good thing we've done is we have charged NIA National Investigation Agency
Yeah.
to investigate these incidents.
Correct.
Now, when we are doing this, we are sending a very stern message that your Royal Canadian Mounted Police, your FBI, your Scotland Yard, great reputation, but not doing their job. And if you're not going to do it, it's our concern. We'll do it, certainly.
No, but
And
how
we'll
does
prepare
one explain, General Singh? You know, on the one hand, whether it's US, Canada, UK, Australia, all these Western countries are clearly rooting for India. You know, their companies want to come here and invest in India. They want to do business here in India. It's a big market. So that reality is definitely there. And then on the other hand, you have this reality, which is that there are a bunch of people who believe themselves to be Khalistanis, who are calling for, you know, separation away from Punjab. And that's being fanned by these very same governments who want to come to India and invest in India.
Zaka, there is obviously vote bank compulsion. Jagmeet Singh is supporting the government over there. He is a known rebel rouser. That's for Canada. And luckily in USA, there has been some indication to say that the government is now willing to distinguish between a legitimate protest and vandalism and terrorism. And there is some hope over there. My call is that we should use it as a domino effect, because these 5 countries where this problem is there, USA, Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand, they are tied up in an arrangement called as I-5, which is anchored on information sharing, intelligence, and surveillance. And all their intelligence and spy agencies are working in tandem. It's time for us, I'm sure our government is doing it already, to reach out to these mechanisms and tell them to share information and to show some heart in this.
So Terry Miliuski, you know, many people say that India has very little options in order to extract a change of behavior by the Canadian authorities or by the American authorities. One thing is, and I know for a fact that this has been going on for a number of years now, these proposed FTA between Canada and India. And of course, clearly Canada wants this to come through more.
The issue that you're raising is exactly the right one,
can this be
because I think
used
we
as
all have to
leverage is the
recognize
question.
that we're at a critical moment in this affair where the Khalistanis have crossed the line. They've escalated too far. They need to be pulled back. And both, in our case, the Canadian government and the Indian government need to change their tactics a little bit. The Canadian government needs to show that when it says we'll always push back, as the Prime Minister said, that they actually do push back, that it's not just words. They have to show us how are they going to where is this pushback? And on the Indian side, Indian ministers, I think they're reaching the point where what they should be doing is saying to visiting Canadian ministers who are seeking market access in India, free trade agreement and the like, of which you're speaking, the FDA and the rest, that the Indian ministers might just start saying, oh, I'm sorry, I can't see you on that day. I'm so busy. I'm really, really sorry. You're just not going to get in the door until you publicly and explicitly condemn these activities without being mealy-mouthed about it. You actually push back. You demonstrate a pushback. I mean, if you're going to say, as the Foreign Minister Melanie Joly said in the last couple of days, that it's unacceptable to have these targets painted on the backs of Indian diplomats, and people marching with these posters through the streets of Toronto.
No, so I want to ask precisely that question to Ray Locker.
And then we accept
Ray Locker,
it's meaningless.
Would a vice versa situation be acceptable to the West if there were posters of Canadian diplomats and American diplomats here in Delhi with a target on their back saying they're responsible for the violence? Would that be acceptable to either of these two countries?
Well, I don't think the United States would like it if U.S. diplomats were identified that way in somewhere like in New Delhi or Mumbai or wherever in India. I mean, there's a limit, though, to what you can crack down on in this country. People are allowed to bring distasteful signs to an event. We may not like it, but they're allowed to do that. As distasteful as that float in Canada was, people could do that if they wanted to. I don't know how many people it would appeal to. I think it would probably turn more people off than bring people to their cause. They're allowed to do that as long as they don't threaten anybody. or cause violence. I mean,
No, but
that's
that's
freedom
the
of
problem. No, that's the
expression.
problem. Whenever there is mobilization of people, they say it's peaceful. That's how they manage to get the permissions and so on. But eventually, where there are masses of people, it will almost always, almost inevitably, descend into violence.
Well, when that happens, those people get arrested and prosecuted. And if we know beforehand that there are provocateurs involved, usually somebody has a bead on those people and can do something in advance of that. Very often there are informants working in the community with the FBI and other organizations will say, watch out for this person.
Okay.
I don't know enough about the pro-Khalistani community in the United States to the extent that there is one to know how that works. I know that in various Muslim communities in the United States, there are people in those communities who say, I don't like what this person is doing. They're talking about violence. I'm going to tell somebody about it. And that's usually how they get caught.
So, Khalistani Marathi, just in terms of, taking the story forward, and this is a question I asked Ray Locker as well, India holds the advantage when it comes to this whole FTA business with Canada. India just recently issued a démarche to the Canadian High Commissioner. There are, of course, a range of options, from sending back the envoys, from issuing notices, and, of course, ultimately also taking sovereign governments to court. There are a range of options. How should India respond? Because in any sort of response of India's, there will be a view that this is escalatory in nature.
Well, it's not my position to tell anyone how a government should respond, but what options they have on the table are many. It depends on what they believe the leverage that they can get from the Canadians or from the UK or from the Australians to stop these attacks happening abroad, because these have two major impacts on the country and the economy of India. Number one, it tarnishes the reputation and also the image of India by seeing these attacks happening on foreign ground, which may deter investors from looking into that country if they see too much violence in a region in which they want to invest in. That's number one. So how do you stop this? You need to build, as I mentioned before, great relations and continue conversations and dialogue with the countries in which you want to build stronger relations for this issue. Second thing that you need to do is that you need to find a way to freeze the assets of these groups, if possible, through money laundering directives that you can work in collaboration with your partner countries. And thirdly, you need to build political dialogue with these countries to showcase to them why this issue is so serious and why it should be on higher in their agenda. Because both the Canadian, the American, and the UK governments have a plethora of issues that are competing for attention from the leadership. So this needs to be put to them in a much more serious way if India wants this attention on this issue.
Lieutenant KJ is saying, just to take this story forward, again, I come back to if Canadian diplomats who are serving here in India or American diplomats who are serving here in India had targets on their back, these posters were put out about them, it would have been almost like a global mutiny. All Western papers would have written about it. There would be comments about how India is fast descending away from a democracy into some kind of oligarchy and so on. So the point is that there are a range of options, but who's going to bite the bullet? That's the question. Is India going to bite the bullet?
Zaka, we have to at some stage, because we can't allow this to drift like this. We've already taken first tranche of steps we've taken. Our foreign minister has been very active, like I told you about NHAI. And then we should take it forward in denying them further progress in FTA and the market that they are seeking in India. Of course, we have to send this strong message to them. And also, our information operations have to get geared up. Because, see, there is no traction for this in India. When Amrit Pal was nabbed, there was no uprising. Nobody stood up for him. He was denounced as an absconder and pagoda. That's what we call here in Punjab. So when there is no traction for this, how come fringe elements are able to keep the issue alive in certain countries and with support from Pakistan and few other elements? So it's time that international media, and it's good that we have some, in this debate, we have people from outside.
Yeah.
And let me tell them, that friends, there is just no traction for this in Punjab, here in northern India. So you have to take this message over there that you can't sustain a movement just by fringe elements over there and create and spoil relations between two countries. Here people have started discussing as to what kind of security should Indian consulates and embassies have. We've never done it. At least in America and Canada and Australia. We are not going to have security like Kabul, where we had to put ITBP commandos. Certainly not. And these countries take pride in not allowing such a thing to happen. And it's rather strange. We have come to this sorry pass that most populous country, the population is today discussing that why is it that Canada and USA are not enforcing the law? And will India have to deploy its own security? It's a very sad day.
No, so Terry Miliuski, just taking off from the point that General Singh was making, there are no takers for this idea of Khalistan here in India. How is this still being sustained in Canada, US, UK, Australia? If there are no takers for the idea of a separate Khalistan, how is it being sustained? Isn't it obvious then that this is a motivated, well-funded, vicious campaign?
Well, it's certainly a successful campaign because the politicians don't seem to have a clue. That's the problem with Trudeau's remarks. It demonstrates, generalizes, not just him, the government, all the parties, they are ignorant. They think that the Sikhs are being oppressed terribly in India and that there's support, all Sikhs seeking their own independent state, which is the last election they got, what, 2.5% of the vote and no seats in Punjab, where most of the world's Sikhs live. I mean, they have no support in Punjab. It's pitiful level of support. Two things need to happen then. First, the Canadians need to demonstrate with concrete actions that they are really taking seriously and really addressing India's concerns over these matters. And second, Indian politicians need to hold Canadian ministers' feet to the fire and say, you're not going anywhere on trade agreements unless we hear you taking those concrete actions.
Is it possible, Klisman, is it possible for Indian ministers, when they meet their counterparts, to raise this issue again and again so that there is understanding and there is a certain underlining that this is one of India's core security interests? You cannot be seen as giving some kind of sanctuary to these people to protest, whether by peaceful means or by non-peaceful means, because it's a bit like saying tomorrow if a whole bunch of Canadians were to protest here in India saying, you know, Quebec should separate itself from the rest of the Canadian mainland, would that be acceptable to Canada? It would be an international incident.
Well, naturally, the Indian government needs to do what it thinks it's in its best interest to raise these concerns with their counterparts. But at the same time, what I would say is that if these protests, which they are happening in violent ways in the capitals of foreign countries, it is the responsibility of those leaders to bring these issues to India and ask the Indian leadership, what are you doing about this so that violence isn't coming upon our lands for these issues? So it's a two-way dialogue, but I think the lack of response, as we mentioned, by Canadians and to some extent the UK leadership, is because they don't see this as a priority in their foreign policy agendas right now. They have many other things in which they're focusing on, as I mentioned before, and unless this escalates in very serious ways, more serious than what they see currently, then maybe the Canadian government will do more about it. It's also by educating yourself about what is exactly happening, what the issues are, and with such competing objectives, especially now geopolitically how active the picture is globally, again, the Indian government must work harder to bring these facts to their counterparts.
I'll give General Singh the final word. What may give? Because I think this July 8th rally is being built up to some kind of, you know, big event that's happening across the East Coast, across the West Coast, both in Canada and the US. What do you foresee could likely happen on the 8th of July?
Zaka, nothing, I'm telling you. Frankly, this will be just, these people thrive on oxygen of publicity. They want to remain relevant somehow. they have certain agenda to keep. They have to do certain number of events. That's how they receive their funding, and they are recognized in that society. So our information should be strong. We should reach out to opinion makers, and we should press on the law enforcement agencies that keep them on a sanitized route, deploy enough security, keep Indian interest secure, don't take them near that so that there is no clash. And this thing, try and keep it as low-key as is possible. Otherwise, that is all we can do. But allow me to tell you, it will find no traction in India.
All right, that I think is absolutely a given, because in Punjab, certainly after the tumultuous period of the 80s and the early 90s, there are absolutely no takers for that kind of violence in the name of Khalistan in Punjab. So I want to leave it at that. Thank you very much to all our guests who joined us. We'll see how this story plays out. And like I said, one important marker going forward is going to be the 8th of July and how the local administrations, whether it's in Canada or the US, handle these protests. Now, let's shift focus here on brass tacks. The Karnataka Speaker UT Khader has sparked a major controversy after making the pitch that the National Highways Authority of India should introduce a special lane for MLAs and former MLAs. The pitch was made to Public Works Department Minister Satish Jarkioli after Congress MLA Abbayya Prasad complained that he's often stopped at toll plazas and asked to show his ID card. Meanwhile, another Congress MLA, Narendra Swamy, has accused toll plaza officials of misbehaving with him. The BJP and citizens activists have rained fire on the Congress, which has championed welfare politics ahead of the elections, accusing it of exposing its VVIP culture and mindset after winning the elections. After the outrage, Karnataka Speaker did a U-turn, saying that what he meant to say was that there is a need for emergency lanes and not separate lanes for netas. However, many activists have pointed out that such lanes exist and commuters use FASTags for smooth traffic amid the infrastructure woes that are faced by urban centers. Is this a power trip that reeks of VVIP arrogance?
ಕರೆಸಿಕೊಂಡು ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಒಂದು ಲೈನ್ ವಿಐಪಿ ಲೈನ್ ಅವರ ಪಾಲಿಸಿ ಮಾಜಿ ಶಾಸಕರು ಸೇರ್ಪಡೆ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ತಮ್ಮ ಕ್ರಮ ತಗೊಳ್ಬೇಕು.
ये तो स्पीकर साहब की अध्यक्ष में एक सभा हो रहा है, उसमें चर्चा हो जाएंगे. अगर मेरा ख्याल से अभी ऑलरेडी वीआईपी लाइन है सेपरेटिज्म, सो अभी आया बनाने का शायद जरूरत नहीं है.
MLAs, many of them they were arrested. They said, please give us the pass also, and this issue is there. And seniors ex-MLA told in the NHAI guidelines, policy, where they have got already emergency and representative lane is there. In that MLAs and other names are specified. Ex-MLAs are not specified. We are also respected and dignified and and aged also. So for us also you should consider the request was there by your ex-MLAs.
In our government, these issues had come up, but we had never allowed any VIP culture. But however, it has come from the speaker. It's really surprising. And probably under the pressure of the Congress colleagues, he might have done it.
ಕರೆಸಿಕೊಂಡು ಚರ್ಚೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಒಂದು ಲೈನ್ ವಿಐಪಿ ಲೈನ್ ಅವರ ಪಾಲಿಸಿ ಮಾಜಿ ಶಾಸಕರು ಸೇರ್ಪಡೆ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ತಮ್ಮ ಕ್ರಮ ತಗೊಳ್ಬೇಕು.
ये तो स्पीकर साहब की अध्यक्ष में एक सभा हो रहा है, उसमें चर्चा हो जाएंगे. अगर मेरा ख्याल से अभी ऑलरेडी वीआईपी लाइन है सेपरेटिज्म, सो अभी आया बनाने का शायद जरूरत नहीं है.
MLAs, many of them they were arrested. They said, please give us the pass also, and this issue is there. And seniors ex-MLA told in the NHAI guidelines policy, where they have got already emergency and representative lane is there. In that MLAs and other names are specified. Ex-MLAs are not specified. We are also respected and dignified and and aged also. So for us also you should consider the request was there by your ex-MLAs.
In our government, these issues had come up, but we have never allowed any VIP culture. But however, it has come from the speaker. It's really surprising. And probably under the pressure of the Congress colleagues, he might have done it.
Is it a power trip proposal? A little later on in the program, we'll also try and open up our phone lines to get you, the viewers' thoughts on what exactly is going on here. Now, yes, subsequently, the Speaker came out and clarified what he's asking for is not a separate lane for VVIPs, but to be able to use the emergency lane. Now, let's be very, very clear about this, ladies and gentlemen. There are emergency lanes in highways across the world. You travel anywhere in the world, the US, Canada, Britain, Australia. There's one lane that's dedicated for ambulances, fire services, other emergency services, law enforcement agencies, etc. Never are those lanes ever used by politicians who are on a power trip. So, let me ask that to Dr. Narendra Rangappa, spokesperson of the Karnataka BJP, is joining us. Bhavya Narasimhamurthy is spokesperson of the Karnataka Congress. She'll also be joining us in a moment. Dr. Rangappa, the Speaker coming out and saying that there should be separate lanes for VVIPs, and then subsequently is clarified saying that VVIPs should be able to use the emergency lane. Why should they be given the privilege of using the emergency lane? That's for emergencies, not for people who think that they are above the common citizens of this country.
Sir, this is a classical case of Congress party displaying their feudalistic mentality and aristocratic behavior. This is totally contradictory to the claim that the Congress cares for the common man, which is totally oxymoron. First, they are not paying any taxes, they are exempted. Now they want to have a separate lane. Now they want to overtake ambulances also. Second, they'll be asking for a separate lane and road for them. This is totally unacceptable and displays the sense of duty what they have for a common man. They're totally not bothered when they're voting and when they're asking for their votes. They say common man is the God and all the things. And after they win and they come into power, they totally neglect the common man. This is a very classical example. Whereas BJP did away with the Lal Batti culture. So this is a classical indication again that BJP is a party for common man.
Okay, no. Once again, I don't want to make this political. This is a class issue. There are a set of people in this country who believe the laws are different for them, and this reeks of that VVIP culture, irrespective of party politics. Bhavya Narasimhamurthy of the Congress is joining us. Bhavya, why? What explains and why should the people, the taxpayers of Karnataka, fund a separate lane or allow politicians to take the emergency lane? Are they the only people who are in a hurry? Should they be given some kind of privilege just because they happen to be elected representatives? I mean, what sort of VVIP mindset is this? That we are a different class of citizens, the regular rules and laws don't apply to us.
You know, the Speaker of Karnataka Assembly has very clearly said that he is not approving something like this. And it was two MLAs who complained regarding some of the behavior of toll, the people who collect toll against them. But otherwise, the Speaker has come out and given a complete clarification that they will be using the regular VIP lane and there won't be any VVIP lanes separate.
No. One second. First of all, why should there be the idea that there should be a separate lane for MLAs? It doesn't make any sense. It is antithetical to democracy.
Of course it is. That's exactly why the Speaker has denied any of such privileges.
So the Speaker has come out and said, one second, sir. The Speaker has come out and said the clarification includes that he's only asking for the Bengaluru-Mysuru Expressway, the new one that was built. He's saying that allow legislators to use the emergency lane. Why? What sort of emergency are they in that they should be allowed to use the emergency lane? Bhavya.
So, are we speaking about the VVIP culture or the emergency lane? Emergency lanes are meant for emergencies, right? In case an MLA needs to reach the assembly on time or something, he might have said, but it has nothing to do with the VVIP culture because he
Sorry,
was very
ma'am, I'm really sorry. No. Is an emergency that an MLA is running late to attend the assembly, or is an emergency that somebody's life is on under threat, and therefore the ambulance has to take the emergency lane? Come on, let's not make a mockery. Let's not make a mockery, Bhavya. Come on, you're a responsible spokesperson.
Let me tell you, let me bring this to your notice first, that we are a government where the chief minister very clearly denied zero traffic within 2 days after he took oath. He said he doesn't want this, which was followed by the previous government.
So then why are your MLAs asking for this emergency lane access? Why is the speaker, ma'am, please explain, why is the speaker writing to the PWD minister saying that MLA should be allowed a free pass on this emergency lane? Why?
In case there is an emergency, he might have meant it, but he is very clearly saying that he is against this VVIP culture. Whatever the MLAs demanded, of course, there was this Congress MLA himself. He complained inside the assembly saying that he faced some harassment in the hands of the toll people who denied his entry with the MLA pass. So when he proposed this, the speaker very clearly came out and said that we are not for such a thing.
Okay. Dr. Rangappa, respond to it. I don't understand. I don't understand why MLAs should not be asked for their ID card. Anyway, Dr. Rangappa.
Sir, I have followed the proceedings of the Vidhan Sabha today, and I did listen to the demands of PN Narendra Swamy and Abbayya clearly asking the speaker to provide special lanes. And the speaker calls up the Public Works Minister and instructs him to do the needful. This is the truth. And Congressperson is trying to mislead the people by trying to bend the facts. And it is hysterical to say that the MLA and his followers and his bodyguards and his gunmen were manhandled by the toll booth people. Totally wrong. BJP condemns such action, and this should be apologized by the Congress.
Okay, I told you the phone lines are open. The phone lines are open. The numbers are flashing on the bottom of your screen. We have a couple of callers who are calling us on the show. Mariam is our first caller. She's calling us from Bengaluru. Yeah, good evening, Mariam. Go ahead.
Hi, Zaka. I just think that there needs to be such rules, and it has to apply to other people. So it doesn't matter, what kind of emergencies that require them to have priority lanes.
All right. There's a problem with her audio. We'll try and see if we can fix it. But thanks for your call, Mariam. Kirti is calling us from Belgaum. Kirti.
Good evening, Zaka. I'm a regular watcher of your news channel. Well, of course, as the question itself says that the politicians do put their perks always on priority. It's always like this. It's Indian culture, I believe. It's in the mindset of the politicians. So there's nothing new about it or nothing surprising about it. Irrespective of the government, one government does more and the other government does a little bit less than that. But they have this thing in their mindset, and that's the reason.
Okay.
So it is in India.
All right. Thank you for your call. Naresh is calling us from Mysore. Naresh.
Good evening, Mr. Zaka.
Good evening.
I was shocked to hear from the Congress person that they want to use the emergency line, because most of the times the MLAs, they want to attend some party workers' marriage function or something like that. See, protocol is there for Prime Minister, for Chief Minister. If he comes in my lane, I'm ready to wait for 1 hour because he is a busy person. We should allow them to go for his duties. But the protocol is not for some joy or for some fun to these politicians to use the emergency line.
Okay, thank you for your call. I'll get one more caller in. Ravi is calling us from Bengaluru. Yeah, Ravi, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Zaka. Good evening. This is Ravi from Bangalore. My point is actually we are going back on civilization on this thing because there are people, there is a central government, there's Narendra Modi who eradicated this Lal Batti culture, and they are going in a positive way, proactive, in a positive way. But here people are demanding a separate lane for VVIPs. And the speaker today, if I've heard correctly, gone one step ahead and said that you will have to include all ex-MLAs and ex-MPs as well.
Yeah.
It will be thousands and thousands of people there. I can understand, like the previous caller said, if it's a prime minister, if it's a chief minister or a cabinet minister who has to go urgently, there is always a VVIP lane, which was always there in the toll, which can be shared with ambulance and the VVIP lane, because not always the ambulance goes first. Always the traffic would be there in that.
Okay.
But if you ask for ex-MLAs and ex-MPs, God save the traffic. The only thing they're not asking for is relatives and assistants and secretaries for them.
Okay, thank you, Ravi. Sushil is calling us from Delhi. Sushil.
Jaka, good evening.
Good evening, yeah.
Actually, I wanted to know from the Congress spokesman, the respected lady who was speaking earlier, had this been from any MLA, it was acceptable. But was this was from the Speaker of the Karnataka? This is something which is unacceptable. And the way the Speaker said, it seemed as if the privileged party has his birthright to have this privilege.
All right, Sushil, thank you for your call. Pawan is calling us from Mysore. Pawan.
Hello, Zaka.
Yes, hello.
Can I speak to you?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. See, this particular route between Bangalore and Mysore was planned for employment and a lot of other facilities for people from Mysore to Bangalore. And we realized that it was such a big gift for us. But today, we find after the change in government, there is a continuous plan to sabotage the time that is being taken to travel to Mysore and Bangalore. This can really hamper a lot of activities like industry, job, education, and a whole lot of things. And we see since the change in government, even the city roads, we find a lot of disturbance from this new government.
All right, Pawan, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your call. I'll give Bhavya as well as Dr. Rangappa the final word. Bhavya, the question one of our callers asked you is, why should the Speaker come up with this? What is the Speaker's locus in asking for access to the emergency lane?
So we need to set this straight, that the Speaker was not the one who proposed. In fact, the Speaker is the one who denied any VVIP culture on one hand. And what ethics do BJP people have to even speak about this? Because when Mr. Narendra Modi visited Bangalore, the whole city was shut down. The whole route was shut down. And they issued an order. The Karnataka government issued an order saying people are not supposed to come out of their house, come out of their gates. They're supposed to stand on the balcony and look at Mr. Modi. This is the elitism that BJP, reeks in.
Okay, Dr. Rangappa, final word. Respond to what she said. She's saying when the Prime Minister visited Bangalore for campaigning, the whole city was shut down.
The Congress spokesperson is misleading and she's providing false facts. Nobody is asked to stay away. There were definitely traffic restrictions, which was pre-planned, and even the High Court had given directions, and we have followed the High Court directions to the alphabet. So this is how we function. Not that we say one thing and do one thing. We say we are common man people and we behave like aristocrat. We say serve the people and you behave like a feudalistic mentality. So the Congress is totally feudalistic and aristocratic.
All right. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Dr. Rangappa, Bhavya Narasimhamurthy, thank you very much. And also thanks to all our callers for joining us on this special segment here on Brass Tacks. As we finally wrap up, we're shifting focus to a mega CNN News 18 ground report from the state of Jharkhand, where an unabated influx of illegal migrants from Bangladesh has led to a demographic shift in the Santhal division. This affects the lives of tribal communities that have lived there since the 18th century. In fact, for years, these illegal migrants have been provided shelter in local madrasas. They're able to get their hands on fake documents and even get inducted into the electoral rolls. CNN News 18's Saurav Rathod traveled to Jharkhand to get us this report from the Santhal region.
Behind me is the Rajmahal Hills of Santhal region in Jharkhand, where the Santhal tribe had settled in 18th century. They were brought by Britishers for agricultural purposes. But the very Santhals fought with the Britishers and Zamindars against the atrocities of Zamindari system. It was fought in 1855, 2 years before the revolt of 1857. Since then, the Santhals had decided that they would not sell their land to any non-tribal. But the existence of the brave Santhals is in danger now. Reason? Demographic change.
A letter from the special branch of the Jharkhand police has warned of an influx of illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. The letter accessed by CNN News 18 warns that these illegals are being given shelters and madrasas in the tribal Santhal Pargana region. Fake documents created and their names added to the electoral rolls. CNN News 18 travelled across the Santhal Pargana region of Jharkhand from Sahibganj, Pakur, Dumka to Deoghar.
90 के दशक से लगभग इस क्षेत्र में लगातार बांग्लादेशी घुसपैठ हो रहा है और बांग्लादेशी घुसपैठ का आप अंदाजा इस तरह से लगा सकते हैं कि राजमहल प्रखंड, उधवा प्रखंड, बढ़रवा प्रखंड, पाकुड़ सदर प्रखंड, इन क्षेत्रों में जो पंचायतों का विभाजन हुआ है और नए पंचायत बने हैं तो उसमें से अधिकांश पंचायत वही बने हैं जो मुस्लिम जनसंख्या से अधिक थे और इसके माध्यम से बड़े पैमाने पर एक नियोजित साजिश के तहत इस इलाके में घुसपैठ हो रही है.
The claim on illegal influx seems to be substantiated by the census figures. Between 2001 and 2011, there has been an overall increase of 14% in Muslim population in the state. In the same time period, the Santhal population grew at 14.2%.
These are the things which are coming in the reports. We have not yet received any report from the government as it. But once we receive it, we have already given the directions that wherever any illegal kind of activities that comes to the notice of the local administration, whatever the legal steps has to be taken, it will be taken by us.
For the BJP, this change in demography is due to Bangladeshi infiltration, a claim the state government denies. Government appears to be playing down the issue, blaming the BJP for fear-mongering.
पाकुड़ जिला जब 2000 में झारखंड और बिहार बना तो केवल 35% मुस्लिम पॉपुलेशन. आज पाकुड़ का यदि आप सेंसस निकाल लीजिए अभी 2021-22 का जो भी जनगणना होगा, आपको आश्चर्य होगा कि वो कम से कम 62-63% आदिवासी लड़कियों को जबरदस्ती धर्मांतरण करके या शादी के माध्यम से जो बांग्लादेशी घुसपैठिए हैं वो जमीन भी हड़प रहे हैं, वो उनके साथ शादी भी कर रहे हैं, उनका धर्म परिवर्तन भी करा रहे हैं.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी के पास इशू कुछ नहीं जनता के, और ये बात आज से नहीं बरसों से हम लोग को सुनने के लिए मिल आ रहा है. लेकिन हमारा कहना है कि बॉर्डर सिक्योरिटी फोर्स किसकी है? बॉर्डर सिक्योरिटी फोर्स कमजोर है, मॉनिटरिंग कम है. इनके जिम्मेदार कौन है? इनको रखने वाला कौन है? उनको देखने वाला कौन है? केंद्र सरकार है. तो केंद्र सरकार की विफलता मेरे सर पर मढ़ाने से कुछ नहीं.
Social researchers quoting government data say the Adivasis form the biggest among the migrant population, fleeing from unemployment and poverty.
एक तो गवर्नमेंट जॉब्स काफ़ी कम है और जो भी इस क्षेत्र में जो भी काम करते हैं लोग एक्चुअली मोस्टली पलायन करके महाराष्ट्र, गुजरात और आपका पंजाब पलायन करके ही लोग काम करते हैं. तो यहाँ पर कोई बहुत बड़ा फ़र्क नहीं हो रहा, लेकिन बाहर जाके यही लोग काम करते हैं.
Activists allege that these illegal immigrants are encroaching on tribal land, especially in the Sahibganj district. This land in the Nayabasti locality of Rajmahal is owned by J. Tudu, a Santhal. He alleges that his private property was encroached upon by Muslims. Construction of pakka houses can be seen on this land. We tracked him down and he showed us the papers of that land. He alleged that he was not the only victim.
बहुत सारे ऐसे हैं हमारे कास्ट के लोग जो हैं उनकी ज़मीन पे भी काफ़ी सारे अवैध कब्जा हुआ है। ये किसी न किसी रूप से हुआ है, या कोई जमाई बन के कर ले, या कुछ शादी का प्रलोभन देकर कर ले, या कोई दूसरा स्वार्थ देकर कर ले, लेकिन कब्जा वहाँ पर हमारे संथाल ट्राइब की ज़मीन पे काफ़ी कब्जा हुई है।
We are here at Rajmahal subdivision of Sahibganj district, and this side of the railway track we can see the land over here, and it's totally tribal land according to the papers what we have got. And now we can see the constructions going on. Some makeshift houses are there made up of aluminium sheets, and brick houses are there. That means that construction of some houses have already begun, and we are learning that these houses belong not of the tribals but from illegal migrants, according to the local people here.
It's not just tribal land. This mosque is being constructed in the ecologically sensitive zone of Sahibganj, Udva block.
Just in the range of 200 meters, we have seen that there are around 5 mosques, and this mosque is under construction as we see.
The local MLA says he has raised the issue in the Jharkhand Assembly but has received no response. CNN News 18 too reached out to the local administration for comment, but answers were not forthcoming.
मैंने विधानसभा में इस बात को उठाया था कि आप पता करिए कि वहाँ धार्मिक स्थल कैसे बन रहा है, लेकिन सरकार गोल मटोल जवाब दे करके अपना इतिश्री समझ ले रही है। तो कहीं न कहीं ये तुष्टीकरण की राजनीति कारण इस प्रकार का खेल चल रहा है।
We have traveled more than 2,500 kilometers and covered 4 districts and international border as well to bring you this report. There are several cases of Bangladeshi infiltration. The Ranchi High Court has taken cognizance of the PIL filed, and the special branch has asked the police captains to submit a report. The issue is the internal security of the state. The issue is the survival of the tribes in the state. The issue is whether the government is playing appeasement politics. The outcome will be the action taken by the state. With camera person Shahbub Alam, this is Saurav reporting from Santhal Pargana for CNN News 18.
Ajit Pawar says it that Sharad Pawar has always been wanting to go with the BJP, and discussions have been held for a very long time.
Sharad Pawar keeps everybody guessing about his real motives and intentions. Why is this brazen violation, 13,200 people missing, nothing's been asked, enforced disappearance?
But who's got the guts कि बिल्ली के गले में घंटी कौन बांधेगा?